what I said is there are two main planks that I repeatedly hear over here in the media, and that is that the Russian government has zero interest in good faith negotiations, and that the Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure are not mirrored by Ukraine. However, I think both of these claims, these planks, look quite thin when you listen to people like, General H.R. McMaster, who said more or less that, there are plenty of off ramps for Putin, but we want to close off every one of them. And then there's what I alluded to in my monologue, that the West has poured tens of billions into a revitalized military industrial complex, right? And there's a whole network of factories churning out drones that are pipelined into Ukraine. So do you think this is the right response, the right Western policy response? And if not, what do you think the Western policy platform should be in regards to the Russian-Ukraine war?
Your audio is definitely going in and out, but I got the question. And is my audio sounding okay to everybody?
Your
audio is good. It's
okay,
solid.
Great. I think the Western approach is the same approach that I and the others at the Quincy Institute have been advocating for since the very beginning, and that is doing everything we can to get both sides to the negotiating table. I think it is unproductive for Western leaders and the media to say that Russia has zero interest in coming to a deal. Just like I see it's unproductive when the Russian leadership goes to behind cameras and says the same thing about Zelensky and Ukraine. I think both sides have a growing interest to end this war. Why? Because we see that Ukraine has bled population. It's running out of soldiers that it can throw into this war to the point where it's picking up guys and throwing them into vans and getting chased down the street by wives and daughters and children because they don't want to see their fathers go. We, meaning the West, is pretty much supporting Ukraine's economy. And if we pull out and Europe can no longer support their economy, they are going to collapse. Now, Russia is also being hurt economically by this war, but they're bigger and they have more factories and they have more people, and they could engage in this war of attrition longer, but they also have an interest in seeing this end because they don't want to bleed their own economy. So I don't appreciate McMaster or any of these other hawks who believe that if we just throw more weapons into this war, that somehow there will be victory right around the corner. That's the same thing they said about the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war that went 20 years. Let's listen to some real voices here. Let's listen to voices that advocate for diplomacy because this thing isn't going to be won on the battlefield. It will go on, and maybe it will be a frozen peace like Korea, and people talk about that. But if we really have an interest in seeing peace in Europe, and also an interest of the United States not having to lead security in Europe for time to come, we need to find ways to end this war. And it's not going to happen by throwing more drones and more long-range missiles into the situation.
Benjamin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you think this is the correct policy platform of Western governments?
It wouldn't be my policy platform. I don't think it's correct. I do understand a lot of what's happening. And a lot of things that don't get talked about that much. And this is that Russia has been supplying energy to Europe in bulk. And actually, just a couple of years ago, people might remember we had to end up admitting that we went and trashed some of the new pipelines to try and keep that going in bulk. And the powers that be, they don't really care that the people are suffering that much. They are in this war with Russia for energy, and for the actual dollar itself is at war right now. And they don't have any interest in making peace with Russia. Ukraine's been a proxy war that we've used for years and years. Back when the Soviet Union fell apart, you can literally find videos of Senator Joe Biden saying that we would never have, they asked if we will have war with Russia now that the Soviet Union has fallen. And he said, as long as NATO never tries to enter the Baltic states, we will never have war with Russia. Amazingly, NATO has been knocking all into the Baltic states, and weird war with Russia. It's absolutely amazing. So we knew this was going to happen. We knew that with the agreements that we made, and whether they were an actual treaty or not, we knew this coming out of the fall of the Soviet Union, and understood that Russia would never want armaments on their borders. That's absolutely insane. And we have forced this entire situation, and we don't care about the Ukrainian people, nor does Zelensky.
In Garland, we could look at the overthrow of Yanukovych in 2014, but the origins of this conflict even predates that. For example, we could go to the Bucharest summit, where they discussed the expansion of NATO into Georgia and Ukraine. So, what's your views on this?
Well, there are a couple of things, because I've been following this for many years, and I think it is kind of absurd to say that Russia has no interest in good faith negotiations, when in fact the Minsk Accords was good faith negotiations. Russia, I've been following this for years and reporting on it as each incident happened. So it started with the Battle of Sepulveda, I believe that was 2014, when the Ukrainian army was surrounded. And Angela Merkel went to Moscow and talked to Vladimir Putin, and they set up the Minsk Accords, which was an agreement that each side would do certain things. And the Russians continued to say, hey, we've got the Minsk Accords. This is what you're supposed to do. Are you going to do this? And Germany and France and the United States and Ukraine didn't answer. So to say that the side that did everything they could to maintain the agreement that they had called the Minsk Accords is the side that isn't a good faith actor is absurd, number one. Number two, a month into the war, we had the Istanbul Accords, where Ukraine and Russia again agreed on a good faith agreement to end the war. And according as reported by the Ukrainians, reported this. Boris Johnson came to Ukraine and told them, no, don't take that. That's number two. So the side that continued to make agreements and say we'll keep the agreement is not the good faith actor, and the side that continues to break it for them is the good faith actor. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And might I add, we have to add this. 𝕵𝖎𝖙 Brzezinski's 1998 book, The Great Chessboard, he talked about taking Ukraine and using it as a weapon against to destabilize Russia. In 2019, anyone can look this up. There was a document that was written called Unbalancing and Overextending Russia. It was written, commissioned by the Rand Corporation, in which they talked about exactly how they were going to use Ukraine to, quote, destabilize and unbalance Russia. So some guy writes a book how he's going to beat up Garland, makes an agreement with Garland, breaks it, and then beats up Garland exactly the way he said he was going to beat up Garland, and then says, you know, I think Garland's a bad faith actor. It is preposterous for anybody to make that. I mean, it's laughable for anyone to make that argument.
Tyler, thanks for coming on. My question there is, do you think that the present response from Western governments in regards to the Russia-Ukraine war is the correct response? And if not, what do you think our response should be? So I'll turn to you. Can you hear me, Tyler? Apologies, I think there's a problem with my audio.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I'm hearing you as well.
I'm hearing you. It's just something. Tyler may be the only one not hearing you.
Okay, Wick, could you respond to that?
I didn't hear anything from Tyler either. I didn't hear.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Tyler either. Oh, so this is going to be an interesting panel. I think I disagree with all of you. I do not see Putin as being someone willing to give up his imperial ambitions in that region, and it extends beyond Ukraine. Ukraine, I would argue, is just a stepping stone. And we know this because he has said this on multiple occasions, right? He has claimed that he wants to restore like greater Russia, and he's talked about like where that is and how it extends into places like Poland and the Baltics. 𝕵𝖎𝖎 here talked about how NATO has expanded into the Baltics. Well, the reason why the Baltic states chose to join NATO, right, why they were like, maybe we should join NATO, was because and in response to Russian aggression. They were fearing that if they did not ally themselves with the West, they would be under attack by Russian aggression. And the idea that Russia is a good faith actor, I don't see that borne out. They have violated almost every single agreement that has been made. We mentioned Minsk. We could talk about the Budapest Accords. They've been trying, and they've done this in other countries too. This isn't the first time. They did this in Georgia, right, where they set the stage to provoke a response. This is their MO. They provoke a response to have a soft justification for going in and taking an area over. And yeah, it should be an interesting discussion. I'm happy to have it. So I guess to answer the question directly, I think the West needs to take Ukraine more seriously because it is the most important war currently going on in the world.
Tyler, can you hear me now? I still don't think Tyler is. I don't think Tyler can hear us. I gave him I messaged him. I gave him a private message. Okay, I would like to play a clip. One, please.
I don't know that he'd go to Moscow. Maybe he would. Would you go to Moscow?
It's difficult. There are a lot of Ukrainian drones there. That's why. Dangerous.
He doesn't want to be hit by a drone.
Europe.
No, it's hard. Would you? It's hard to go to Moscow.
Yeah. You know, I remember there was that New York Times piece a while back that pulled the curtain back on how this war has sort of been run out of 𝕵𝖎𝖎 in Germany, a US base that has effectively been the nerve centre. And that's where the 2022 counteroffensive in Kharkiv was coordinated, the failed counteroffensive in 2023 to sever the Zaporizhzhia land bridge, and more recently much of the drone campaign. So, Garland, I'm hearing in the media a lot that Ukraine is now winning the drone war. And don't get me wrong, some of the footage we're seeing out of Russia with the drones hitting the Russian infrastructure, I mean, it looks bad. But is it really accurate to say that Ukraine is winning the drone war when it is the EU that is funding the bankrolling, basically the construction of the drones? The drones are being built in Britain and it's been coordinated in 𝕵𝖎𝖎 in Germany. So is it even accurate to say that it's Ukraine's drone war?
Well, I don't even recognize Ukraine as a country as far as I'm concerned. It is a tool of the NATO military, nothing more, as far as I'm concerned, based on what I've seen. I mean, and let me just say this. Our friend from 𝕾𝖍𝖎 made a lot of assertions, but you'll notice my assertions were all backed by dates and facts and times. This happened. And when I say this is why I think the Russians are acting in good faith, I give you examples of books, of documents, of the Minsk Accords and what happened in the Minsk Accords, rather than just say this happened, that happened, this happened, Putin said this, Putin wants this. Anybody, I can make an assertion and say Putin wants to fly to Mars. It sounds great. It sounds good. And I think he's mistrustful. But to make blanket assertions without backup and data, that's the problem that we're having in the West. It's all based on narratives. Now, the discussion of the drone war from the media that told us that Russia was running out of missiles in 3 months, the media that told us that the Russians were fighting with shovels, that Russians were taking, literally, they said they were taking the chips out of washing machines and using them in hypersonic missiles as though we're supposed to be stupid enough to think that the chip in a washing machine will run a hypersonic missile. You know what I mean? So whenever I hear the media with one of these tropes about Russia's running out of missiles or Ukraine's advancing, blah, 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 I kind of do a lot of research myself, but I'd say like this, here's the issue of war. I have a book behind me, von Clausewitz on war. I would recommend that people do things like buy some books and start reading them and understand the Russian way of war. In the end, the only thing that matters is who won and who lost.
True.
If we go
That
12
is true.
rounds, if we go 12 rounds and you win the second round and you get knocked out in the fifth round, you're still lost. And that's the way the Russians fight. And that's what's happening to Ukraine. Ukraine is getting taken apart, and their military on the line is getting obliterated. Yeah, are they going to throw some drones in this day and age with the technology of drones? Can you throw some drones into another country and blow up a few, oil storage facilities? Sure, that is doable. And with a country the size of Russia, there's no way to stop those things. And you get a lot of smoke, and it looks good. But every day I wake up, another village that I can't pronounce has been taken by the Russians. And that's all that matters. They took 1,846 villages on the way to planting their flag in Germany in World War II. That's the way they fight. And if you read this crap in the media about, well, they blasted a drone in some region today, that's a victory, you don't understand war.
Garland, I must say, but
Sure.
I recently heard Stanislav Krapinovic say that somewhere along 20% of Russian oil and gas infrastructure has been damaged. That must be having an impact.
Well, one thing here's the thing about it. If you ever like self-defense, there's two things. There's throwing a punch and can take a punch. A lot of time, the person that can take a punch is going to win the fight. The Russians have shown they can take a punch. They lost 27 million people. I don't think inconveniencing them with gas, particularly when the Russians look up and they see the U.S. on their border. I mean, I'll put it to you like this. If the United States woke up and the Russians were building bases in Mexico and flying drones made in Russia and China into Houston, blowing it up, let me tell you something, the U.S. would fight a long time to stop that. And so I think these things sound fantastical and they sound, oh, there was smoke and we get pictures. In the end, the Russians are going to fight to the end. And unfortunately for Ukraine, there's not going to be a whole lot left of Ukraine, if anything, with this. Boy, with friends
Can I respond
like
to some of this?
Ukrainians don't need any. Go ahead.
One moment. I just want to see.
Go ahead.
Tyler, can you hear me now? Tyler.
Is he my buddy on this? Is he my
Having
backup?
serious technical.
We can hear you.
We can
We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Right. Good. Tyler, can you hear me?
He can't hear us.
We can't hear
But
you.
we
Right.
can
We're
hear him.
halfway there.
We can hear him.
Jeez.
Sorry, Keely. Okay, why don't you respond and then I'll move to Keely.
Sure, I'm sure the technical issues are frustrating. I understand. I guess like when we say that I'm not backing it up with dates, I can give you some dates. So Britain in 2006, who killed 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙? 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙. Who killed them? It was Putin, right? 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 abduction in Estonia in 2014. Who was responsible for that? Russia. The ammunition depot explosion in 𝕵𝖍𝖎𝖙. I can't pronounce these words either, right? In the Czech Republic. Who was responsible for that? Russians,
Don't read
right?
Cyrillic?
Like
What
when
is
we
wrong with you?
can you not hear me? Oh, you were making a joke. Okay, that's fine. It's hard to hear sometimes, right? But like when we talk about like the amounts of times that Russia has violated, right, the West's sovereignty, right, the West's airspace, the West's land, they sent troops, a unit into Estonia back in 2014. And they seized and they kidnapped an Estonian officer there, right? Held him at gunpoint, transported him to Russia. It was an abduction, and Russia did this, like to act as if like Russia is just this small actor that is never like there's always being provoked. No, they are constantly treating us as enemies. They are doing this over and over again. That's
a straw man argument.
Our citizens.
It's a straw man argument.
Why is it a straw man argument?
Because I said that's not what I said. You've changed it.
Yes, you said I don't have dates to back up what I'm saying, and I gave you those
that's
dates.
not what I said. You said they didn't keep agreements. Now
Sure,
it's
we could talk about
they
Sure,
kicked over a
I'll
dustbin
go to
in Wellingham in 1874. You said they didn't keep agreements. I named the Minsk Accord. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Agreements.
Minsk
Now
too.
it's every bad
February
thing they did.
15th. Okay, in 2015, again, the ceasefire took effect that day. But that day, the same day, Russia-backed forces were continuing to advance. They didn't even keep it for a single day. They violated the ceasefire of Minsk II immediately. And that's, I'll give you a specific date, February 15th, 2015, a specific treaty, the Minsk II, right? Russia-backed forces did this, and we know this because the OSCE recorded it, documented it, and this is how we know. And that's just one example. But again, also, I want to address the idea that Ukraine is losing this war.
Quickly,
Look,
please, I want to turn it to Kelly.
If Kelly wants to respond, she can, but I do want to address that one thing.
I'm open to another question.
Well, just finish your point, Mike.
Oh, sure. The idea that we know, look, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you who's going to ultimately win this war. I don't know, right? But we do know that logistics are extremely important, and Ukraine has been hitting Russia's logistic trains so hard that they may not be able to hold Crimea. They are struggling, and I don't think you can undersell that. But anyway, that's enough. I've ranted long enough, and you can respond if you like.
Kelly, do you believe that the drone offensive, especially in the last 40 days, the drone offensive into Russia, is having the effect where we could see Crimea taken back by Ukraine, or that we could really actually call it a Ukrainian drone offensive when, as I alluded to earlier, it's basically been coordinated from 𝕵𝖎𝖎 in Germany, and the plants are being built and set up in Britain that are producing the drones, pipelining the drones into Ukraine. So have you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Garland on the point that Russia can take a punch. And I don't see, and I am, not the biggest military expert in the House, but I have access to a lot of people who are much more learned than I am on military strategy. And, absolutely, the drones have changed the face of the war. Ukraine has adapted, but so has Russia. Yeah, they're sending Western-backed drones and missiles deeper and deeper into Russia. But as Garland says, Russia can take the punch. And if anything, those incursions, those attacks are only motivating Russia to dig deeper in and lash out at NATO members over whose skies these are going through, and as you said, where they might be emanating from. So what I see is a dangerous escalatory spiral in the making here. Now, I know people have been warning for years now that there are all these red lines, and at some point Russia is going to lash out at NATO, and it's going to bring NATO in and the United States into a direct confrontation with Russia. So far that hasn't happened. My assessment is that Russia is very much aware and wary of getting into a direct confrontation with the United States, and has held its fire on that ground. But I do think that Zelensky knows what he's doing. He's pushing, he's poking. I think he would love it if Europe and the NATO members came into this war directly and officially. And I think we should all be mindful of that has been his pursuit from the beginning, to get us more involved. I mean, we obviously have been involved to the tune of billions of dollars, but so far we haven't gotten in a direct fighting war with Russia. And I'm afraid that this current, escalatory development, the drone war and the deep incursions, as well as terror attacks. There was a bombing in Moscow over the weekend. I was going to lead to something a lot more dangerous if we don't get to some sort of agreement sooner.
And also the difference is, when you compare the drone war between Russia and Ukraine, Russia has the ability to down most of the drones that Ukraine are launching.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean what we're ignoring here is that Ukraine has virtually run out of missile defense systems. They are begging for more. and we don't have them to give. There was just a report today that said, or a few days ago, that from Center CSIS had released some new data saying that we've depleted more than 50%, I believe, of our Patriot missiles and our THAAD missile interceptors. That is what Zelensky wants. On top of that, we have depleted our ATACMS and other long-range missiles in our war with Iran. So we don't have any more of those to give Ukraine. And so we got to face some realities here that they're not going to be able to fight this war without a stronger pipeline from Europe and the U.S. That pipeline is starting it's starting to become a trickle in terms of the assistance, because we can't make these weapons fast enough to give them. And I don't think Trump wants to, because he knows that our stockpiles are down for our own national defense and our own wars, including the one we started with Iran. So this isn't looking too good for Zelensky. And you make a great point about the missile defense capabilities on Ukraine's end.
And moreover, with these factories being built in Germany and Britain, it's putting a bullseye, a target on us too, which I would rather not have. Benjamin.
Yeah, Iran has shown that they at least have an understanding of attacking the things responsible for the damage that they're taking. And I understand that we pretend like, oh, they attacked all these nations. Well, they're very specific with what they're attacking. They're attacking the components we're using to attack them. And yeah, so that's absolutely legitimate. And 100% historically, attrition is Russia's best friend. I think the Tartars were the only ones that were able to particularly defeat that attrition when facing Russia. That is their primary weapon. You look in so many different ways, we're at odds with them, and that's what people don't understand. Russia in 2016 burnt all their GMO crops in the entire country to the ground. They planted the entire country with organic. They're on the cusp of being an organic leader for the whole world. The energy that they were providing Europe, that if you couple that with the fact that Russia, unlike most countries, has been paying off their debt at a mad rate. Russia, even though they don't have any money and we tout that, they've also been getting rid of their debt. We're only rolling in at 40 trillion plus another 200 trillion in money that we don't have, but it's coming due. Like that's we can't really talk shit about economies like we really do. Like we're talking shit about Iran's economy, but they're in the billions in debt and they're floating on oil. We're in a debt that just the interest on our debt payment is almost at 1 trillion a year. That's absolutely insane. So if we let them take over the energy market and their money system is getting ready to be their money system, oh, we're economically just busted.
Darland, didn't Ukraine recently attack some Russian civilian infrastructure in regards to food infrastructure?
I think, did Wick want to respond to?
I do have a thing, but if it's his show, I'm
yeah, I didn't know if somebody said something, if he wanted to respond to specifically.
Yes, both Kelly and Benjamin said some things that I would like to push back on, if that's okay. I don't know, but again, it's your show.
Sorry.
Go right ahead. Yes, I don't want him to lose his thought.
You're fine. So again, this idea, and this is to you first. Do you mind if I call you Vincent? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. Caledonian is a bit of a mouthful for me, and I have trouble pronouncing things in general. Right. So Vincent, like you keep saying that you're not sure that these are Ukrainian drones because we helped produce them. Russia's being shipped hundreds to thousands of drones by Iran, right? Ironic, again, pronunciation is my strong suit, right? So wouldn't by that same logic, those drones not that are coming in, the 𝕍𝖎s that are coming in almost every night, hitting Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian apartment buildings, Ukrainian hospitals, right? Like Ukrainian civilians, wouldn't those be Iran's drones and not Ukraine's?
No, because if I'm correct, the Iran drones, which Russia produce, are built in Russia. They may be back-engineered 𝕲𝖎 drones that Iran originally provided them, but if I am correct, Russia produces their own drones.
I'm sure that some of the drones are produced in Russia as well, maybe even a majority, but they
The
do
majority are.
well, prior to the war, this may not be true anymore, right? After we struck Iran, but they were getting shipped in shaheeds, right, to the tunes of hundreds to thousands. And again, Ukraine also produces its own drones. It also produces homegrown drones. It doesn't just get drones from the West. And I guess to Kelly's point, right, like I don't think that either of us are in a position to say how our stockpiles of air defenses and things. I know that it would be good if we gave more air defense systems, Patriot missiles, ATACMS, and other such things to Ukraine. And I do know our stocks are a little depleted because of Iran. But I think that just means that it shows that Ukraine can stand strong and is gaining territory today, even without those things. So imagine what they could do with those things. I've been hearing Ukraine's on the verge of losing for the last 4 years, right?
Sorry, did you say Ukraine? Did you say Ukraine is gaining territory?
Yes.
Where?
Yes, for the first time. This is I talked to Colonel Hamilton, I believe. He's an ex-retired Army colonel. I spoke with him last month, and for the first time in a long time, there have been territorial gains by Ukraine. Russia's has been stopped, and a net gain is happening by Ukraine. At least when I talked to him.
Okay, you not just because Russia has been stopped in a particular oblast in Ukraine doesn't mean that Ukraine is gaining back territory. So can you tell me in what part of Ukraine or occupied territory?
I can look it up.
That's fine. Tyler, while you do that, Tyler, can you hear me now? I do not believe Tyler can hear me. Okay, Garland.
Yeah, go ahead. And what was the question? Could you what was the question again?
The question was originally about the drone platforms that are being built in the EU and the UK to be used against Russia. And can you really call this a Ukrainian offensive? As to what I alluded to, these systems are built in Britain and coordinated from Germany. So I struggle to get my mind around the sound bites that I'm hearing in the media that this is a Ukrainian drone offensive that has turned the war around. This to me looks like an act of desperation to hit civilian infrastructure, to hit oil and gas targets, to hit the 𝕬𝖎. It seems desperate to me.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Turn the war around. A war is fought on the ground. A war is fought for a normal Western way of fighting. The war is taking territory. For the Russian way of fighting generally is to destroy your capability to fight, to destroy your soldiers, to destroy your equipment, and then the ground takes care of itself. So I would say at this point, what we're looking at is, yes, there's some drones being thrown at Russia, and some strikes are happening. Lately, there's been a significant amount of missiles and drones strikes. I mean, really powerful missile and drone strikes on Kiev. Odessa has been pretty much, their ports have been shut down. Ukraine is effectively a landlocked country now that they've lost their access to the sea. So I don't see how a country that has become a rump state now, that has thoroughly lost its access to the sea, can say things are getting better. If you've lost your access, any country that's, that has access to the sea and loses access to the sea is in a very, very bad condition. And I'll say this, we can, over the course of several years, we found out that these drone offensives are being, the drones are being manufactured in the West, that most of the strategies are coming from the West, that in fact that several of the offensive actions were directed from Germany by American generals, right? So I keep going back to this. If you go back to 2014 and say, what happened in Maidan, the government fell 2 weeks before the Ukrainian government fell. Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt were talking, and she named the people that were going to be in charge of the country. And then 2 weeks later, shockingly, the country fell. I have to assume that those two things were related, that that wasn't just a very strange coincidence. And then afterwards, Americans started flooding into the country. Literally, we had a woman, I think her name was 𝕬𝖎 𝖚 or something like that. Literally, she didn't even have Ukrainian citizenship. She was from like New Jersey. She flies into Ukraine and she takes over all of their money and their entire financial system. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So the government falls mysteriously. The people who were named by the United States suddenly become in charge of the government. And then Americans flood in and run everything. And I'm not supposed to believe that that was the typical US coup that we've seen over and over and again. And they began building immediately for war with Russia. 2019, 𝕾𝖍𝖎 𝖚, former head spokesman for the government of Ukraine, says, we know in order to join NATO, the price is a big war with Russia. Well, bad news for them. It's a price that they can't afford to pay. And I will guarantee you this, there will be no Ukraine when this is over and done with. The other thing is this, and I think this is important to understand, and that is that what the so-called supporters of Ukraine, and I don't want supporters to support me right into the grave, but the so-called supporters of Ukraine don't seem to understand is this. If you talk to the Russian people, rather than this idea that throwing drones at Russia and doing all of these things are going to somehow anger the Russian people, and they're going to be furious at Vladimir Putin. The anger that they have at Vladimir Putin is, you're not hitting them hard enough. You're not fighting them enough. You're not blowing them up enough. Wipe them out. Take them out. They're actually getting the opposite. The Russian people are not saying, we're mad at you because you're fighting. Please back off. They're saying, hit them harder. What the hell is wrong with you? Why are you letting these people get away with this? Nuke them, destroy them, wipe them out.
Sorry for interrupting. Back to Wick's point. I mean, when it comes to the maps in Ukraine, we have recently seen towns like Lyman and 𝕬𝖎𝖏 and Konstantinivka fall to Russia. So I don't know if Kelly would like to respond to us or Benjamin, but can you address Wick's point that Ukraine is taking back territory? I haven't heard anything like that.
That was directed at Kelly, not me.
You can answer, Ben, if you want. I mean,
anyone who's aware of Ukraine taking back territory? No,
I am not aware. I'm aware that they've been holding Russia in places. It's like we've said, it's a war of attrition. The drone war has enabled both sides to get in their punches, so to speak. But I would like to address what Wick said about the depletion of missile defense. I mean, it is so important to emphasize that Zelensky would not be coming to the United States and begging for help, particularly with Patriot missiles, if he didn't need them. Now, are they able to go toe-to-toe right now with Russia on the drone war? Yes. But they have run out of missile defense to combat Russia's ballistic missile offensives, which, as you know, when you read the paper every day, you see that Russia is mixing in its offensives with ballistic missiles and drones. And so we've got to the point where Zelensky is asking the United States, Trump, to give Ukraine licenses so they could make Patriot missiles in Ukraine themselves, which would be a terrible, terrible idea for so many reasons, not the least of which giving Ukraine, which is a notoriously corrupt system, our blueprints, our intelligence for the most prestigious weapon system we have is just like giving them keys to the car and saying, we hope you don't drive off with it. That and the fact that they will never be able to build a Patriot missile inside the country without our assistance without components coming in from Europe, without components coming in from the world market. And so it's kind of a bridge too far. But the fact that they're asking for that and so much more tells me that, yeah, they do need them. They can't do this alone. And so the more that we promise them things that we can't give them, the longer this war goes on and the more that Ukraine destroys itself, like Garland said. I mean, it's just, it's not hyperbole to say that they are at a breaking point right now, population-wise, economy, and militarily. And we're just helping it along because we have our own agenda that we're pursuing there.
I'm going to attempt this one last time. Tyler, can you hear me? Okay, that was a bad idea.
Tyler, I'm sorry, buddy.
Tyler must go. Sorry, Tyler. Wick.
See you later. Yeah, I have a lot to say to that. So
Yes.
I can make you aware of the areas that they have gained territory recently in. And once again, even more importantly, perhaps, stopped a lot of Russian territory gains. Now, look, that there always going to be this push and pull, this back and forth that's happening, that's been happening across the front. But for the first time in a while, it's been a net territory gain for the Ukraine. I'm going to butcher these names. In Western Zaporizhzhia, the west of Orkiv, Ukrainian
That was
troops.
good. That was quite good. The pronunciation.
It's not gonna carry on. Okay, Ukrainian troops have advanced along the 𝕵𝖎𝖎 axis towards Kamyansky, 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙. They've been counterattacking there, and again, these aren't large gains, but they are gains, right? They are showing that they can hold their own, and I just frankly disagree with Kelly's assessment of the situation. Now, yes, would it be nice for them to have more air defense? Would it help them? Absolutely. Absolutely, it would. It would be better. They would have less casualties. They would have a better ability to push and a better ability to resist Russian aggression. However, they have been doing this for years, and they've been suffering the ballistic missile strikes, the drone attacks for years. And they have, like, you talk about Russia being able to take a punch. I think Ukraine has demonstrated that they too are able to take a punch.
True, but Ukraine does not have the demographic depth to take this for as long as Russia.
I think that you guys are underestimating how drone warfare has changed the game in unmanned assaults, which Ukraine has become expert in, right? That we are learning how to do. From like in the West, we are learning the tactics of the new era of war from the Ukrainians, which has demonstrated a resiliency, right? An expertise that we just haven't been able to replicate. In Iran, for example, we were being under attack by drones, and it was the Ukrainians who came in and helped us to stymie some of those attacks for much, much cheaper than we were doing it with our Patriot missile systems. They're like, well, you're wasting a lot of money here. Here's how we can protect you and help you there. And they've fundamentally helped us lessen casualties on our side in the Iran conflict. Now, that said, right, like, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you who's going to win in the end. I'm not going to pontificate on I am an expert military general that can see all things in the future. But when we talk about Russia being able to withstand casualties, look what happened at Afghanistan, right? Afghanistan won. They drove out the Russian Empire, right? And they had similar, right, a dichotomy. Like Russia was an empire, the USSR. They had so many more industrial capacity, so much more manpower, and yet Afghanistan was able to resist and stop them. I think Ukraine has every ability to do that as well, and they have demonstrated that they will. And I think it's important to, and I'll let you go in a second, I think it's important to support them because, once again, I don't think Putin will stop. He must be stopped. And Ukraine is the place to do it. It's the domino, right? We talk about domino theory, right? It's the domino. If Ukraine falls...
I remember that from Vietnam.
Yes, but it wasn't incorrect, right? It wasn't entirely incorrect. And I'll tell you why. Putin has said that, what do you think when he wins in Ukraine? He's going to consolidate his forces. He's going to basically use the gains that he's gotten in Ukraine to replenish his losses. And then I guarantee you, he's going to test Article 5. He's going to test our resiliency, and he's banking on, and he's been, again,
Why
using
hasn't he
psyops
done
in
that
America
already?
to make sure that when Article 5 is called, that America sits out. And whether
so
they
the
will or not
largest
is an
country
open
in the
question.
world, the largest country in the world, the one thing they need is more country.
They need more resources. They need
More
to,
resources?
Yes.
Russia, who has
Right.
more
Hold on,
like
do you think
oil
Russia-
and gas, and they got
why
a
do you think
gas
they're
field
going-
the size of Europe that they haven't even touched. The idea that that Russia needs more space or that they need more resources, I'll just leave it at that. Never mind. I mean, if that's your position,
I mean,
hey,
well,
What
sure.
this-
I
what
If we
this
talk
is-
about
is
using
what
like,
this
I can't
is-
push back on that.
is the Democrat version of the Iran boogeyman that we've also had to listen to for 30 years. And all it is the propaganda wing of the government trying to convince the people to get into war. And the Democrats
guys
are
think
like,
Russia's
this one's
winning?
our favorite. And the Republicans are like, this one's our favorite.
okay.
And the people are like, we ain't got no more
can't push
fucking
back on
money.
that
None
either,
of
I
it's
guess.
our business.
Could I jump in just for one
Yes,
second,
yes,
Vincent? You know, you make a good point that Ukraine might have the heart and spirit to dig in to resist Russia, but the point is they don't have the money and the resources to do it without us. We were able to engage in a war against the Taliban for 20 years, and we still lost that war.
We did.
But it went on because we were making money. We were printing money just to keep that war going. And it was a massive sinkhole. Ukraine doesn't have that luxury. If we pull out or the Europeans pull out, they can't sit there in a war for 20 years against Russia. They will fall. So it's not apples to apples. And I don't know if you, Wick, are willing as an American taxpayer to pay for that war for another 20 years. We got a lot of problems at home. And I think Americans aren't going to put up with billions and billions of dollars. And we've already stopped giving them
When do you think
billions
the
and
last
billions.
time
And
we've given weapons to Ukraine?
they've been getting them all through this Trump
America,
administration
specifically,
because
the
they
US.
had been, what's that?
From the U.S. specifically, when do you think the last time we sent anything to Ukraine, weapons-wise?
It was in this administration because they had
Yes.
already been promised
Yes.
by under the Biden administration. So they've
was-
been
it
they've
was
been
last year.
going.
It was last year.
Well-
They've been going a year with not a nary a bullet from
Well,
America.
let
so the
me-
idea that they're
let
just
me-
going to fall if we pull out.
Let me clarify
It's not
that
gonna
because Trump said, I'm not going to give any more. So he's pleasing the people who don't want to give any more. But what did he do? He said, we'll give them to Europe to give to Ukraine, the little shell game.
Yeah,
You know, he said, well,
Peril
Europe
initiative.
can buy them for us and then we'll give them. Well, guess what? We ran out and they're not even giving them to Europe anymore. And so that tells you two things. One, you know, Trump's not interested in funding this war anymore. But two, we don't have the weapons to give Ukraine, even if we wanted to. And
Can
that's a problem for
Wait,
Zelensky.
I,
and
I,
Ukraine.
I understand.
Kaylee,
but-
sorry for interrupting, but I think there's a sort of schizophrenia in the framing of sometimes here. You can't say that Russia is this indefatigable power that is going to advance all the way to the cliffs of Dover, yet at the same time, Ukraine is winning on the contact line and Russia can't even take Kiev. Can you?
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Elaborate
Well,
about-
yes. As they are now, they cannot. But even if they can't succeed, they will absolutely try. I don't think they're going into Britain specifically. To be clear, I want to make
So
that
where are
clear.
where are they going?
I think. Well, they're going to go into parts of Poland
After they lose the Ukraine war,
So-
right? They're going
Hold
to
on.
lose the Ukraine war.
if they win.
And
under
then
the
as the
conditions- if they
Ukrainians are
win-
advancing on Red Square,
Hold on,
they're going to
you
have
guys-
to go
you guys keep
around the
doing this
advancing
Martin Bailey.
Ukrainians
You-
to get to Poland, right?
There is a little schizophrenia going on in this panel. That is true. You keep doing this Mott and Bailey where like, well,
me a
no,
bedtime
they are
story, Wick.
absolutely winning in Ukraine and they're
me about the
absolutely
big
going to
bad
be
boogeyman.
destroying Ukraine, but they pose no threat to the rest of Europe, even though they say, Putin specifically have said, greater Russia, which includes a lot of the Baltic states, okay, right, that he wants them back. This is something he has stated, and I believe him when he says this. And again, we talk about like if they win in Ukraine, they're not going to go in the very next day. They're going to consolidate their power. They're going to use the manpower, the resources, the breadbasket, right, of Ukraine to really reinforce, to resupply, to get back into fighting shape. And they're hoping through their psyops, through their paying of influencers, through their meddling with our elections, to make it that we won't respond. That's what they're very good at, and that's what
They're hoping that. Yeah, they're hoping that. Now you're telling us what the Russians are.
That is their plan.
Do you hear yourself?
I do.
They're hoping. You have now fallen to the point where you're telling us what hope is in the Russians' heart. Gee, I mean, it's like,
do you know how I know this?
Hopes this. That sounds absurd.
Well, do you know how I know this? Is because this is what they've said. This is their plan. Putin has said, this is what I want to do.
No, I don't
You
know.
keep saying
He hasn't
that,
said
but I
that.
never heard it. You're the only one on this
he
panel
hasn't
that's
said
ever
that.
heard it.
Kelly.
Go ahead, Kelly.
No, I would like us to clarify what Putin has actually said and what we think he might say or wants to say, because
I'll get
I
quotes.
haven't seen this plan for rampaging across Europe. I just haven't. I've seen a plan to bring Ukraine back into the bosom of Russia. This has been disputed for decades, since World War II, but I have not seen this plot to take
I'll get you the
over
quotes.
the rest of Europe and its former Soviet satellites.
I have heard 𝕾𝖎 say that they wanted to break Russia into pieces. Okay, so I have heard it from the other side say 𝕾𝖎 literally said they want to take Russia into pieces and divide it up. The Russians didn't say they want to take. In fact, you know what the Russians said? We don't. Why would we want them? They literally said, why would we want the rest of Europe? What is there that we want? The Russians, in my opinion, are just sick and tired of Europe. They're tired of it. They're tired of signing Minsk Accords that don't get dealt with. Just prior to the war, in December of 2021, the Russians sent a document to NATO and to the United States. And the document said, we want a new security infrastructure with Europe. And it said, these are the following issues that we want to talk about. And if this doesn't happen, there will be military/technical response. So the Russians are so terrible and evil that they literally, before they went to war, sent a document saying, we need to talk about this or there could be war. The response on video from NATO was, the Russians don't get a say. The response from Tony Blinken was, this is not even a starting point, verbatim. So the people who said, look, if we need to talk about this stuff, we need to negotiate, or hey, there's going to be a technical response. Might I add, and most people here are familiar with the infamous "Niet mean Niet" cable. That would be William Burns when he was the ambassador to Russia, and he came back and sent the cable and said the following, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Look, I can't find anybody, the most liberal, Western-loving person in Russia. I can't find a single person that is not ready to go to war if we go into Ukraine. That if the U.S. or the West or NATO tries to expand into Ukraine, that's going to be a war." Angela Merkel said that if the U.S. when the U.S. said we're going to bring Georgia and Ukraine into NATO, and Angela Merkel said the Russians will consider that a declaration of war. So the idea that we somehow had no idea that building bases in Ukraine, that NATO training military bases in Ukraine, that putting Americans in charge of everything in Ukraine, that we had no clue
Russia doesn't get to tell us where to go.
Is absurd.
I'm sorry, Russia doesn't get to make that decision for us. We're in a sovereign country. They don't get to say, well, if Ukraine wants to and you want to, then we're not going to let you. No, they don't get to. Hold on, let me just ask you this.
Does that apply to Cuba?
Can I ask you
this directly? Does that apply to Cuba?
Direct question.
Does it apply to Cuba? Can the Russians build a missile in Cuba? Can the Chinese build a base in Cuba? How about Venezuela? How about when the Americans literally said we should go to war with Russia because they're parking ships
American
in South
interests
America?
and Russian interests collide. Which interests would you like to see succeed?
It's not. This is not about me.
Question?
I'm saying, are you going to apply this to Ukraine, but
Russia
not to Cuba?
interest and America interest.
I'm not in charge of anything.
When they collide, whose do you want to see succeed?
The world's. And the world shouldn't be nuked.
I would like to see America's interest.
Well, I want the world, the entire world. The world doesn't need to be
Here's
nuked.
the trick. Here's
And
the
if we're
trick. When America's interest succeeds, the world's interest succeeds because
What
America has been a
America?
positive
I'm
force in the
American.
world for
Garland,
ever since World War II. right?
I
And
would
before
say
that.
that there are consequences to actions. So when the CIA gets involved and puts bases in the Donbass, and when America and Europe is funneling arms and into Ukraine and participating in the overthrow of former presidents of Ukraine like Yanukovych, there are consequences to that, such as Russia moving in and taking Crimea. If it wasn't for the fall and the overthrow of Yanukovych, right, Russia probably wouldn't have taken the Crimea.
No
Right? So
question.
there are consequences to this. So you can say, yes, Russia doesn't get to say that we put CIA bases in Ukraine. No, they don't. But there are consequences to it. And these
That
are the
works both
consequences.
ways. That works both ways.
Yes.
When Russia acts like when Russia pushes and tests us and constantly makes ultimatums, right? There are consequences to that too.
By
And there
pushing-
should
by
be
pushing-
consequences.
wait up,
did they-
Russian-
did they
wait
Let's
just
not.
start by
I
putting
want to make it
bases
very
on our
clear.
border?
There are two forces in the Ukrainian and Russian conflict. There is the moral side, the good side, which is America, which is the West, which is Ukraine, and then there are the imperialists, Putin imperialists, who want to basically take a land grab like they did with Crimea, right? And take all of Ukraine, its entire territory, right? Not just the Luhansk and Donbass, right? It wants it all if they can, but we're going to stop them because, again, like people make this mistake often that war is always bad. And it is to an extent, but it's not the worst thing. War is not the worst thing in the world. Sometimes wars are worth fighting. And I'm here.
With
My
nuclear
advocacy
powers.
today to you, if I may finish real quick, my advocacy day today to all of you is that supporting Ukraine in its bid to remain independent from the Russian Empire is a positive force in the world. Because if Ukraine falls, China will go into Taiwan and take
Let
Taiwan.
me say, and let me add this. When you talk about this issue of good and bad, let me give you an example of court of let's just say a person who's arrested for a crime, who may have committed the crime, right? But the police don't Mirandize him. The police beat a confession out of him. The police violate his rights. Now, he was a bad guy and he was wrong, but justice says that anything they got out of him can't be introduced as evidence in court, right? So what would you say, Garland? Well, you know what I would say? The Constitution is clear. He may be a bad guy or a good guy. That's not relevant. What's relevant is, do we get justice here? And justice says, you got to let this man go, because you violated his constitutional rights and the Constitution stands, right?
Okay,
So my point being, the issue
Garland.
is not about good and bad. The issue in the end is not about who's right and wrong or who's good and bad. It's about justice.
Yes, and I think
Go
the
ahead.
justice means
Ty-
that Ukraine.
Sorry,
remains-
wait, one moment. Tyler,
Yes.
right?
I hear Tyler.
Finally.
Woohoo!
Woo, we got Tyler in. Well, is this going to be a 5v1 now, or is this going to be a
Bring it in,
4v2? We'll
We
find
can go
out.
on for the next 30 minutes.
Tyler, I
Yeah.
don't know if Tyler, I don't know if you've been following us so far.
I have, yes. Bits and pieces, but the last at least 10 minutes.
Okay, if you
I
would
would
like to
say,
respond.
if I may just weigh in. You know, frankly, the way Europe looks today, I wouldn't mind Russia rolling across Europe. I mean, honestly,
Oh my.
it's,
Okay.
it's a horror show. It's an immigration nightmare. They're just, I mean, pathetic. And the idea that Ukraine, this criminal regime that we've installed with this, I mean, Zelensky is a joke. It is a complete joke. And the fact that we support this clown, this coke snorting autocratic clown, is a disgrace to our country. You know, I don't, the Russian Empire. What empire? I'm sorry, I don't see it. I'm
Well,
missing
Ukraine's
it.
stopping that
No,
empire.
it-
The coke snorting clown
Right.
is kneeling
Sure.
on Putin's neck, and they're going to be painting fucking murals of him in New York City. Okay, this is what's happening now.
Of Zelensky
Ukraine will
or Putin?
outlast Putin. Absolutely,
country-
and Putin
the country-
cannot
the-
stop. To be
the
clear,
country with
Putin cannot stop his
900
war because
bases
the
is
minute he
fighting
does, his
imperialism now,
economy
right?
collapses. So he's locked
Yeah.
in, but
Tyler,
it's a trap.
Tyler,
and we are winning.
Tyler, I would like
You
to
will
hear this. I'd like to veer us away a little bit from what we're talking about to Trump's response. So when Trump was re-elected, there were many voices on the left that were voicing concerns about how Trump would,
Are
you
you
know,
being
yeah,
ambushed?
he had an alleged fondness with Putin and that he was going to pull the rug out from under Ukraine, you know, and I think he's actually done the opposite.
Can I
to be
invite a
honest.
buddy just real
'Cause-
quick? Do you
no,
mind if
no. He's enabled. I would argue that he's enabled more support for Ukraine. He's still providing intelligence to Ukraine. He's providing weaponry under the Pearl program. And if you look at the effects his comments and his actions have had on the European states have not only increased their defence budgets, but they've actually increased the amount of aid and funding to Ukraine. So, where do you think the Trump and the Trump administration is on this? Really is on this issue?
Well, I think well, first of all, they did more. The first Trump administration did more than Obama's administration did to help Ukraine, as far as arming them up and providing support. But look, I mean, where the Trump administration is stuck with what is the result of, frankly, the Democrat policies over the last, say, 15 to 20 years, and this obsession with Russia hatred. I don't get it. It's funny, when Russia was communist, the Democrats had no problem with them, right? When it was the Soviet Union, they were just, oh, why should we, be at odds with these people? And they throw off the Soviet Union, the communist system, and suddenly the Democrats have been obsessed with villainizing Russia. And, I just don't see it. And as far as the Trump administration's position, I mean, they're stuck with this, and it's it's American prestige, and it's a sticky wicket, I guess, that I would like to see them. I'd like to see us out of there just as much as Iran.
Can I ask you
think
the
he's
same
going to
question?
try to. He's also got the defense establishment against him. The gravity of all the investment, the sunk costs and all this that would in order towards continuing to support Ukraine's defense, whatever. But I mean, this is again, as several other Garland and I believe Kelly have said, and you said actually, this is of our own creation. I mean, Yanukovych, that whole. The whole coup that took place and the installment of this regime have been nothing but a negative for the American, for our foreign policy, our budgets, our credibility.
Yes.
And it's got to end. I mean, this global imperialism from the United States on behalf of largely either military industrial interests or corporate interests has got to end. And soon. It's going to collapse either way.
Okay, Benjamin. Where do you think the Trump administration really is on the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Because there is the Pearl Initiative. He's still providing intel. There was the Alaska summit that went nowhere. And I don't think he is as fond with Putin as I hear many left-wing voices in the US claim he is.
Putin is going to do what's in the interest of Russia. That's just what Putin does. I've never met a Russian, and I dated a Russian girl for a while, and I've never met a Russian that doesn't think he's Jesus.
Okay, yeah, no, that explains a lot. But carry on.
Well, my ability to assess world politics has nothing to do with where I put my penis, but sure. I mean that's my wife's Danish now, if that makes a huge difference. Also, I don't know. This was a very long time ago.
Danish collusion.
The interesting thing to me, and the thing that Trump's really coming up against, is he lost as soon as he started going to war. He lost most of his approval. It just took a tanking because the American people in general, no matter what the two wildly fucking cult-like ends of the political spectrum want to believe, the entire middle, we don't want it. In fact, anti-war candidates, the Democrat Party had to start canning people like 𝕵𝖔𝖎𝖙 back in the 70s because you come out anti-war, the American public is like, yes, that is what we want. We want to quit having all these wars to enrich people, because it doesn't enrich the American public. It doesn't make our life better. We're tired of the boogeymans that we hear from the Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats, it's like a version of Q for the Republicans. As soon as they start saying, oh, then he's going to march through Poland. Oh, now you know you're in for fucking story time. Bring me my blanket. Tell me about the boogeyman.
It's insane making. I remember.
Let me just say this real quick. I wish our leaders were as loyal to their people, or to us, as Putin is to the Russian people and to his.
Putin has gotten millions of his people killed.
Wait a moment, Kelly.
I would like our leaders to be as loyal to us as Americans as they are to Ukraine and Ukrainians and Europeans, because they don't seem to give two shits about us.
Mm-hmm.
I think just to steer the conversation and a little bit back towards what could be done, I do think that if Europe was less dependent on the United States for its security, we could extricate ourselves from this and feel like, I take what Wick is saying. No one wants to see an aggressive hegemon in Europe, nor did they want to see an aggressive hegemon, hint, in the Middle East. I say we get out of the Middle East. I say we get out of Europe and allow Europe to take hold of its own security.
Kelly, I would like to
tomorrow.
Kelly,
No,
sorry for
why?
interrupting.
Because they become too dependent on us.
I would like to push back a little bit there.
Okay,
I'd like to push back a little bit there. So there are historical blood feuds, as you know, in Europe. And if you look at the number of times that nations in Europe, such as France, the Third Reich, even Britain, has invaded Russia. And I think that the US, as much as it has been a force for instability and conflict elsewhere, it really has stabilized things in Europe in the second half of the 20th century.
I agree. And what happened after that? We established NATO, the transatlantic alliance, but then we became NATO.
Mm-hmm.
A bureaucracy built up with us at the lead, with us putting the most money and resources in it. And that allowed these European members to spend on their domestic priorities, welfare, healthcare, education, letting moms stay home, and not have to worry about having a double income, and all those things, because we were paying for their security. Yes. And I don't think that is the best outcome for our post-World War II leadership. I think, yes, we helped rebuild Europe. Now let's get out. We can't do it tomorrow. I understand that.
Would you like to see the US
the Marshall Plan wasn't intended to be permanent.
Right. Kelly, would you like to see the US pull out of NATO?
Yes. Right. Pull out of NATO. You know what? I am a little agnostic about that. I do think that NATO needs an absolute organizational shift towards European leadership. We should not be leading the alliance. I say we stay in the alliance, but we put Europeans at the head of all of these agencies and departments and the bureaucracy and administration itself. We allow them to pay. We allow them to build up their own arsenals so that we're not sending them things that we have to help them operate. I think that would go a long way. And if they want to fight Russia, let them fight Russia. Though I think that's a bad idea.
Is that a good idea? I mean, I could just point to Napoleon, Adolf Hitler, Boris Johnson. You really want Europe taking charge of NATO?
I think they should, because the alliance was created during the Cold War, to create a hedge against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is gone. And for all the conversation that we've had and Wick's assertions, it is not a threat to the United States.
Okay.
I
would be able to respond to some of that.
Garland, it looked like you were wanting to say something.
I am a little wary. Every time there's a world war, it's Germany, France, and England. I am wary of leaving those three lunatic countries to their own, to their own merit. For God only knows they'll start
Yeah, I'm
another
worried
war.
about that too.
They'll beat the hell out of each other. If they can't fight anybody else, then they'll beat the crap out of each other. That's what history tells us, number one. So I think they need some sort of adult leadership there of some kind to keep.
Are we
them from
the adult
beating.
leadership, though?
I don't. No, right now we certainly aren't. So there's none. But the other thing that you have to take into account right now is this. Earlier when Wick said America, what do you mean when you say America? When you say Germany, England, and France, what are you really talking about? And here's what I mean. Right now, what's Merrick's leadership? I mean, what his approval rating is down there with toe fungus. You could put Merrick's, Macron, and whoever's in charge this week of England together, and you're lucky to get 25% all together. Most of them are despised by the people in their countries, and they are the ones who are dragging their countries into certain nuclear annihilation, because if they go to war with Russia, there is no question they'll all be annihilated in a nuclear conflict.
I just say one thing and then I'll zip it.
Sure. Go ahead, Kelly.
I think I should finish. I think I should finish my thought, like my dreamscape for what a post-war Europe would look like. I do think to resolve some of the issues that you raise is that they really do have to talk to Russia, and they really do have to work out some new security architecture that is both, European led, but also incorporates Russia into the scheme. And I know that this has been tried, time and time again. And yes, Wick, we often, the United States, warned against such cooperation, and look where that got us in the 80s and the 90s. Like after the fall of the Soviet Union, they wanted to be brought into
we've tried the
regional
Russia
architecture
reset over and over again. It does not work. It has not worked.
Well, it doesn't work because we blew it off.
Can I just push back?
Yeah, you look stressed out, Wick. So
I am. First of all, do you guys mind if Destiny joins?
I
would like backup. It's a 5 versus 1. I would like someone who's on my side who knows a little bit.
Okay, bring him on.
I'll bring him on. I'll send him the link.
That is fair.
As I say that, like
it's taking Tyler's time. Tyler hasn't got to talk. He needs
Tyler, please go on.
No, I mean it's been excellent comments. I would say, what Europe was, what we rebuilt with the Marshall Plan in the post World War II, is not reflective of what the European Union has become. And it's like, what are we supporting with NATO? Honestly, I mean, it's almost a tyranny in itself that defies what we were trying to liberate Europe from, the way the European Union's been run. So, NATO is an anachronism at this point. And unless Europe wants to become more free and, liberated, truly liberated, instead of under the yoke of this bureaucratic administrative tyranny, then what are we doing? Why are we footing the bill to support this?
May I push back on some of this?
Yes,
please?
go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm being a little aggressive here, but there are many of you.
It's like 5-1-1 here at the moment, so I understand.
So first of all, I think it's a good thing that we lead NATO. It allows us to make decisions and not have decisions made for us. Now, I agree with you that Europe can do more and should do more in order to build up their military, build up their production, all these things. I'm not opposed to that. But NATO has been the most successful defensive alliance in the history of the world. And the fact that people are advocating that we pull out of NATO or just agnostic toward that is wild to me. Putin is a threat to the world. If we pull out of the Middle East, if we pull out of these places, China, right? Do you guys think that China has our best interests at heart? No. Russia absolutely does not. And they will continue to come at our necks. If we abandon our allies, if we abandon Ukraine, then that's the first domino to fall. And I think that we are going to live in a less stable world. We will be impoverished in many ways. And when we talk about America first or having America's best interest at heart, most of America wants to support Ukraine. We have poll after poll after poll that says most American
outside of
citizens
keeping
want to
Russia
support
in
Ukraine.
check. How is Ukraine our ally? I don't get it.
One moment.
See what the
Destiny, it's good to have you on. Have you been following the show so far?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so the the question I was asking there is, where do you think the Trump administration really sits in regards to the Russia-Ukraine war? What's your thoughts on it?
I think the United States should continue to lead the world in security. I think we should continue to provide services to Europe. I think we get a lot out of it. And I think it's really sad that people seem to want to do things to weaken our position in the world and strengthen the position of Russia or China in the world in the absence of any kind of U.S. leadership.
But my question earlier, and I hear a lot of sound bites from media, left-wing media in the US, and from a lot of podcasters too. But there's a fondness between Putin and Trump, and that they're worried that Trump was going to pull the rug from under Ukraine. But my perspective's quite different in this. I think the opposite has happened, and that he's actually enabled more support for Ukraine. You've seen European defence budgets rise. He's also set up the Pearl programme, where Europe is buying arms for Ukraine, and he's still providing intel. So, what do you think? Where do you think Trump personally sits on this issue?
I don't think any of what you just said is true. Do you think that Ukraine is better off for Europe protecting them now, or if the United States would have been a strong ally from the invasion onwards?
I don't think Ukraine is better off being at war with Russia. I think they should have resolved this before
Wait, that
it
wasn't my
started.
question. Do you think that they're better off now with Europe having kind of picked up the slack, or if the United States would have been a strong ally initially? I also agree that they shouldn't be in the war, but Russia invaded them. So, I mean, what choice do they have?
I'm saying that the United States is still a strong ally, and that actually because Trump is president, they have stepped up support for Ukraine. They're still providing.
I'm asking
They're still
again.
providing intelligence. There is the Pearl program, where the European powers are buying arms from the United States and funneling them to Ukraine. And Trump, you know, he may have met Putin in Alaska, but there was no ceasefire. There was no peace deal. There was that attack also in 𝕵𝖎𝖙 against Putin's residence.
Do you think that Ukraine is better off now with Europe kind of picking up the slack, or if the United States would have been a strong ally from the beginning?
The United States is, I believe the United States have been a strong ally since the inception of the war in 2022. I don't think that's really changed, regardless of whether it's Trump or Biden. I think there's a deep state that has a set agenda and overthrown Putin, just like HR. I alluded to what HR Master said earlier about closing off all the off-ramps for Putin. I don't think that's changed, whether Trump is at the helm or Biden.
Can I add something?
So you think the United States? Well, hold on. So you think the United States has been supporting Ukraine as much as they could since the beginning of the war? Do you think the support has gone down since the beginning after our first package, or do you think it's remained the same in the last 2 years under Trump?
No, it's changed. It has changed under Trump. However, Trump
has gone significantly down from the United States, right? And Europe has had to pick up the slack. So my question was, don't you think Ukraine would have been better off if the United States would have been a strong partner right at the beginning, rather than try to force Europe to pick up the slack?
No, I think because of what the United States has done, there are cities in ruins and rubble in Ukraine, millions dead, millions displaced. I think if the United States was a good faith actor, none of this would have happened.
Why? Isn't it Putin that invaded? Wasn't it Russia that invaded Ukraine?
Yes, but it was also the US who had an involvement way back in 2014 that led to the overthrow of the Ukrainian president, Yanukovych. There was also the...
so that didn't happen. But I'm saying Russia didn't invade them a few years ago because of what happened in 2014.
Yeah, they did. And in fact, the U.S. even said they would do it. And in fact, Angela Merkel even said that if NATO moved into Ukraine, Russia would consider that a declaration of war.
Yeah,
so
well,
yes, it was
our
documented everywhere. Everybody knew this was going to happen.
NATO didn't move into
one at a time.
Yeah, NATO never moved into Ukraine, so I don't know where that comment.
Yeah, that's absurd.
But they expanded right up to up to the border. I mean,
like you guys keep saying this,
I understand it. You mean why other countries have joined Ukraine because voluntarily they're able to? Russia is not the Soviet Union, so I don't know why any agreement made there would be relevant. And also, there was no agreement made to the Soviet Union that no new countries would join NATO. Countries
the
are
state
voluntarily
interests are no different.
Yeah, there was.
Just because the government has changed in terms of the Russian territory.
The state interests have changed
because it was the Soviet Union and became the Russian Confederation. What it doesn't mean that they're not still territorially protective and don't want
is Poland in Russia, modern Russia, is Ukraine in modern Russia? Nothing you said is true. The Soviet Union is not modern Russia. These are two the countries that were all part of the Soviet Union. The states have fallen off, and a lot of them are now in NATO.
I'm talking about as a nation.
Yeah, we're talking about
saying the
historically
Soviet
speaking.
Union, the Russian people were different under the Soviet Union than they are under the current government.
Well, there were states that were part of the Soviet Union that are no longer part of the Soviet Union, and I think they have a right to their own security interests.
The Russian state.
What is
Was
the
the
threat
Russian
from NATO?
state the Soviet Union at some point?
What is the threat to Russia today from countries voluntarily joining NATO?
Well, I think we're seeing it.
Yes.
They're firing at Russia right now. They moved into Ukraine. Everybody knew what would happen if this war
Russia
was Ukraine.
invaded
But
Ukraine.
if I can add one
The
other
Nord
thing.
Stream pipeline?
Look, let me tell you this. You can say what you want. If I were the president of Russia, I would have invaded Ukraine. And you know what? If I was the president of the United States and Russia and or China started building bases in Mexico and preparing for a war in Mexico, and they had their leaders all over Mexico, I'd invade Mexico. And Mearsheimer talked about. Wait a minute. John Mearsheimer. Hold on a second. One at a time. John, can you hold on a second? John Mearsheimer talked about the issue of great power politics.
Mearsheimer said that the entire world.
Can I finish a thought here, dude? Can I finish a thought here?
Destiny, one moment, let him finish.
Yeah.
And you can...
So, and here's the bottom line. If you have a great power and another great power comes up to their border, i.e., the Cuban Missile Crisis, we're talking about Russia. We can move 1 millimeter from Russia's border in Ukraine. But the Chinese can't be in charge of the South China Sea or an island which the United States State Department recognizes as a part of China, which is Taiwan. Oh no, they can't be in charge of that. Certainly, but we can be on China's coast. We can be on Russia's coast. We can be in charge of everything else.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, taking missiles out of Turkey.
But they can't come to Cuba.
I just gotta.
We can do it. There's three great powers, and one of them can come to the other two's border, but the other two can't come to our border.
Violating our border.
Doing
they've
that.
been violating the border in Estonia. They've been violating.
What? Go ahead.
Yes, NATO. Like you guys act as if NATO has been aggressing upon Russian space. It has not. What has happened is people. Countries have been scared of NATO, of Russia, and of Putin specifically because he's invaded Georgia. He's done fucky-wucky shit in Estonia. They sent a squad over into Estonian lands to kidnap one of their officers and bring them back. They've killed British nationals.
Oh my God.
I never heard of that.
Ooh, like this, but they are a threat to the sovereignty of those around them. Obviously, people in countries are going to want protection from that, and America, thank God, has provided that protection. And this idea that Russia is just this small bean, they're the aggressors in this conflict. They have gone in to invade Ukraine. If they had not gone in to invade Ukraine, Russia would be stronger than it is today. Putin is ruining Russia. We talk about being good for the people of the country. Putin has gotten millions of his citizens killed in this war. I think over 1 million now have died in this needless conflict.
One moment. Kelly, I understand you need to leave.
Yes,
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Is there any last comments you'd like to make before you go?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, Wick, I totally understand your frustration, and I just want this war to end. And I'm of the mind that I don't believe that plowing more weapons and more money into Ukraine is going to resolve that crisis. I've said time and again that this is not going to be resolved on the battlefield. No matter what you think about Putin or no matter what you think about Zelensky, it's got to happen at the negotiating table. Mm-hmm. And I disagree. I think poll after poll is saying that the American people want this over, and they would rather see a diplomatic end and soon. And I think you're seeing that in polls in Ukraine as well, and even in Russia. I think people recognize how this is going to end. It's just these powers and these agendas are getting in the way, and it's not helping the Ukrainian people at all. And I as I said in the beginning, I mean, we are helping to destroy that country, because we have convinced them that fighting this to the death is the only way to see forward. And I don't agree with that.
Would you just carry
one moment? Again,
if somebody would go to war,
thank you for coming on.
The only way to end that war,
Destiny, what
and your family to submit yourself to slavery, would you agree to that?
Excuse me?
If the only way for you to end a war was for you and your family to just enter slavery, to be enslaved, but it would end a war against you, would you agree to that? Oh, she's gone. Oh, good one. Okay.
Okay.
I'll take that as a no.
Destiny, can you repeat that question?
The Ukrainian people don't have elections at this point because Zelensky won't permit it. So
Tyler,
what is being
wait,
done?
Tyler,
What's the point?
Tyler,
are
one
you
moment.
aware? Wait,
Let
well,
me
I'm curious.
talk-
Tyler, are you aware that the laws like in Ukraine allow for withholding elections while they're at war, or are you totally ignorant of that? Or you just
Does
like
that make it
blatantly
right?
lie?
Does that make it right?
It's their law.
Does that make it
It's
right?
their law. By who is
So
it
what?
wrong? It's
So
their
what?
law. What do you mean? So what? So what about the law? You think the law matters? What do you mean?
So we're not dealing with a
You want it-
democratic system here.
It's-
We're dealing with a
It's not
wartime
democracy because
dictatorship.
It doesn't look exactly like how you want it to look. What do you mean? What does that even mean? What does a democracy mean to you?
It
That there
doesn't,
are
I
no
don't want
laws
it to look
and
anyway. I
everybody
don't give a
knows
crap how it looks. We just need to be out of there.
Then why are you telling Ukrainians that they have no democracy because you don't like how their system is set up for wartime?
I'm not trying to tell them anything. You're the one who wants to
Literally
be there.
just said it's not a democracy and it's a dictatorship. Do you know the difference between a democracy and a dictatorship? Do you think a dictator needs a law
Yeah,
to remain in
why-
power?
Why wouldn't
Yeah,
he hold
vote for
elections?
people.
I'm sorry. Why wouldn't he hold elections? What's the purpose of not doing it?
Because the law in Ukraine is when they're at war, they don't
I can
hold
explain this.
elections for a
I
new
can,
president.
I can explain
That's
the reason the
on
law
books. If
exists.
you don't like the
if
law,
I
that's
may.
fine. But that's
Wait a
not
minute,
the law.
everyone.
The Constitution
one moment,
says
one
even in
moment.
wartime.
Wait a minute. Right, I'd like to veer us a little bit away, right, from this because we've been covering this question for a while. Right, Tyler, last year we witnessed the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, and I alluded to this earlier, and it led to no ceasefire, no peace deal, and instead there was a framework for our future negotiations that never really transpired. And in addition, the European powers have just done everything to stymie these negotiations. So who's the real impediment to peace right now in Ukraine? Is it Russia or Ukraine?
Well, it's who's backing Ukraine. I mean, we saw Boris Johnson go in and sabotage.
That was another lie.
Attempts at
we
peace.
just make up whatever here.
I mean, let's face it. This is a proxy war. Russia is a proxy for no one, but I mean, Ukraine is a proxy for the European, for the CIA, the United States military intelligence industrial establishment, and frankly, who knows what else is going on and what's being covered up. I mean, you saw plenty of money laundering activities under the Biden, the Biden regime with the Hunter Biden, my old classmate, all up in there. And I just think it's a clearinghouse for corruption. There's no question. Ukraine has always been corrupt, pre-Zelensky, pre-Yanukovych. And
Do you think Russia hasn't?
And I think there's people there are interests there that aren't on the surface that are want this war to continue for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Benjamin, what's your thoughts on it?
I think again, all of this is all subtext for all the different moving pieces for the economy. We're all at the tipping point for an economy. Every single economy on Earth is basically at a tipping point of breaking, and we're at this point that's all. These wars are all just subterfuge in order to make these moving pieces. I find it crazy that the only thing that they can say against Putin and the moves that he's making for the people of his country is that he went to war. That's really what is
That's
being
a pretty
said
big
there.
thing.
He killed 1 million of his people. Well, he went to war. So it's like, oh, well, if you let the United States build a bunch of bases right on your border, then there's no problem. Like it's crazy to me that the Democrats have decided that they're like fucking Italian gangsters or something. It's absolutely wild.
Okay, no, hold on. Russia has been pushing the envelope for where they place their missiles and violating the treaties that we have set up for where we can put our missiles, they can put their missiles for years. They've done this for decades at this point, right? Or 2 decades at this point, right? The idea that we are putting
NATO hasn't been creeping into the Baltic states for decades.
The states join voluntarily. It doesn't creep in.
That was something you can even find videos of Biden himself as Senator Biden going, people asking him after the dissolution of the Soviet Union going, will we have war with Russia? Is this going to be a continuing problem? He said, no, specifically, if we do not enter the Baltic states with NATO, we will never have war with Russia. Here we are, fast forward, however many years later, we're bringing in Baltic states and we have war with Russia.
They're going to war with us because of the Baltics joining 24
Nobody
years
saw this
ago?
coming.
How could their tanks be so slow? They're even shittier than we thought. 24 years ago. You're lying.
Destiny, I would add there are consequences to his actions. I'm not condoning the Russian actions. things. But
Of
after
course
the
you are.
Booker,
You're
sweeping.
wait a minute.
You're
let me finish.
sweeping.
Wait a minute.
Wait
Let me
to
finish.
join NATO. They have the right to join NATO.
Let me
Russia
finish.
can't take that right from somebody.
Let me finish. But after the
And
Bucharest,
Russia has the right to defend its borders.
Benjamin, wait a minute.
Russia's
But
borders aren't under attack.
after the Bucharest summit in 2008, we saw Russia move into Georgia, right? So there are consequences to this. When you are talking about the admission of new states
Wait,
into NATO,
consequences to
like
what?
Georgia,
Let the
like
guy
Ukraine,
finish.
Consequences
get-
to what?
Let the
Yeah,
guy
what- yeah.
finish.
No, you're
Let
just
him
rattling
finish.
off lie
I'm
after
trying to
lie.
hear.
Answer the question. Do back and forth. Consequences to what?
No.
When you-
He's the guy asking the questions. We want to hear his question.
He's just doing Russian propaganda.
Let him
No,
finish.
there is no Russian propaganda.
He's the guy.
Oh
He's
my
the
God.
guy
I am
running this thing. In case
I
you haven't
am-
forgotten, I want to hear him. Not,
I
I
am
want to hear.
providing. Wait a minute,
Moscow.
For God's sake, we can't hear you answer
Destiny,
the question. This guy's a
Destiny,
lunatic.
Destiny, be quiet. Be quiet.
This guy's a lunatic. He don't know how to
Quiet.
shut up.
Right. So I'm giving you my perspective on this. I think
I've read
are
your perspective on the
consequences.
internet for 20 years by Russians. I don't
Can
need
you
it- I
cut
don't
this
need
guy
it to
off?
be
He's not civilized.
Destiny, can you
Get rid
hold
of him. He's not civilized.
Destiny,
He's
hold
not
your tongue.
able to act in a professional
Just
manner.
for a moment.
Cut him out of here.
Wait a minute, Destiny, just for a moment, let me finish my point.
He
right?
can't control himself.
I think there are consequences to the admission of new states into NATO. So in 2008, you had the Bucharest summit where they discussed admitting Georgia and Ukraine into NATO. What followed? The Russian invasion of Georgia. Just like when you had President Yanukovych overthrown, what followed? Russia taking Crimea. So I'm saying we should maybe consider our actions in Ukraine and Georgia and not provoke Russia.
I think we should
Is
just
that
preemptively
Russian
attack
propaganda?
Russia. I think we should just attack Russia. I think that's super easy. If
You think
have
we
the
should
right to
attack
invade-
Russia?
If you think you have the right to invade countries around you, yeah, you should just get bombed. I think that's a super easy. That's a
Right.
no-brainer right there.
Repeat that. You think we should attack Russia? You think we should attack the largest
think that
nuclear
if you-
superpower on earth?
I think that why are they attacking other countries around them? Why does Russia have a right
So
to
do
attack
you think
Georgia
the
and Ukraine?
United States
Why
should
does
attack Russia?
Why does Russia have the right to attack countries around it, but we don't?
No,
have the right
no.
to
Wait a
attack
minute.
Russia?
Did you just say you think the United States
Why
should attack
does
Russia?
have the right to attack countries and dictate the security of the countries around them? Why does Russia have that right?
I don't
You
know
just-
what this
you
guy's
just-
doing
Why
here.
should
He's
we
a
bomb
lunatic.
Russia
Destiny,
for what
Destiny,
they
be
do?
This guy's a
realistic.
lunatic.
Where does the right come
Destiny,
from?
be
He's asking-
realistic.
I would like an
If
answer
the
to this
United
question.
He's not going to
States
answer the
Yes,
was
question.
in a
let's
hot
attack a
war
nuclear
with
armed
Russia.
power.
Same talking points for the past 3 years is the same. They always repeat the same shit. These guys are probably paid by RT. It's a super
Destiny,
simple
are you listening
By
to any
what?
of our panelists?
No, he's not.
Right? By
I
what
don't. He's
right?
not listening.
I can
Destiny,
repeat- I
are
can
you
repeat-
listening to any of our panelists, or you just like to hear your own voice?
We
I
had a
can do-
professional panel until this guy showed
Yeah,
up,
where
and
you
now we got a
everything
lunatic
with
in the
no
room, and
objection.
nobody can get in a word
Destiny,
edgewise.
please, wait a minute. Destiny, please, I would like to hear your position, your perspective, but you need to listen to
Sure,
others
here-
on the
this is
panel
my
too.
position. This is my perspective. What right does Russia have to
Do
dictate?
you
the security interests
think the
of countries
United
around
States should
them?
attack Russia?
What right does Russia have to dictate the security of the
Okay,
countries
so-
around it?
You need to
Yeah,
cut
you
him
don't
loose.
answer.
All
Yeah,
he's
you
going to
don't
do is
answer.
ask
Okay,
questions and
Good.
talk
What
over
right do we
everybody.
have to dictate what Russia does in its sphere of influence?
That right is called the
What
UN
is that?
Charter. That's called the UN Charter.
Oh,
You're not
the
supposed to
UN
invade
Charter, huh?
Countries that are around you. Yeah, that's right. The United Nations.
Okay.
This is kind of the thing that we all agree with that keeps the
And
world
we certainly have
spinning, you
clean
know?
hands with it. We have clean hands as far as aggression around the world, right?
Oh, well, if we have dirty hands, then we should definitely bomb them since it doesn't matter to you one way or another, right? It didn't matter at all. You think Thailand...
No,
did-
I think we should
you
clean
think
up
that we
our
should
act
bomb
for
them?
starters instead of being scumbags.
I have a comment. and I-
Garland, go ahead. Garland, go
Okay,
ahead.
I have a comment that I think is
Destiny,
important.
Destiny, be quiet. Garland,
I have a
go ahead.
comment that I think is important, and I think this is critical too. You know, it's something I was going to say a while back, and that's when you talk about a country, when you talk about the interest of a country, the interest of who? Because the interest of the average person, it is my argument that Donald Trump won because people were sick and tired of war and sick and tired of the problems that we were having, and he ran on America first. I know people who vote for Trump that didn't like him, couldn't stand him. I knew people was like, I don't like Trump. A girl on the train once said, I hate him. He called my country a shithole country. I think he's a jerk. I said, yeah, you voting for him? Yeah. I said, why? I'm sick of these wars and these Democrats. So basically, the rhetoric of Donald Trump running for president created a coalition of people that were actually practical voters. People who just said, when a guy runs, whether I like him or don't like him, I'm going to listen to what he says. I'm sick of wars. Trump says he doesn't want war. I'm sick of this, a lot of this other crap. Trump says he doesn't like it. There were practical voters who said, I don't even have to like the guy. But if his policies sound like what I want, I'll vote for him. So Donald Trump created an interesting coalition because he had his traditional supporters. He had people that were kind of ambivalent, and he had people that didn't even really like him, but they were sick of the status quo and they wanted something different, right? So here's my point. They wanted a person who was going to focus on the United States, who was going to focus on our economic woes and get us out of wars and things like that. Right? He had a coalition of people supporting him. They weren't supporting him. They were supporting what he said. Yeah. So regardless of all of this conversation, the American people, many who didn't even agree on a lot of issues, wanted the hell out of this crap.
Mm-hmm. But we
and that's why Donald Trump won, because they wanted
to. It's exactly the same in Britain too.
They're sick of it.
How did that work out? Did Donald Trump get us out of wars?
No, he did not. Here's what we've realized. And the American people have realized over time is that, again, Putin is not going to stop his war. He can't. He's invested too much into it. If he fails in Ukraine, if he makes some sort of half-ass peace deal, he's out of there. He's staked his reputation on it in a real way. His economy, once they stop this war, is going to collapse. I want peace too, and I want to make this clear. I would love to see peace in that region. But the only way to get actual lasting justice, which you mentioned earlier, and peace in this region is for Putin to be stopped. Now, again, the Ukrainian people want us to continue to support and help them. And if
does that, sorry for interrupting, what does that mean to you for Putin to be stopped?
For Putin to be stopped, where he is not able to get to fulfill his military objectives. So Putin wants all of Ukraine. Putin wants to create a peace. Well, first of all,
I've never heard the Russians say they wanted all of Ukraine.
They want to bring it under their sphere of influence. They want to be Belarus 2.0. But you probably don't even think Belarus is a puppet, so who cares?
Yeah. So what that means...
You ever been to Belarus?
Yeah, I just came back from there, actually.
Yeah, I was there.
Why, have you?
I've been there. Yes.
Oh, cool. How much you get paid to go over?
I love to hear your itinerary, but Destiny, I want to turn to something you said earlier. You said, or you implied that you would like to see the United States attack Russia. Do you?
I would like to see the United States defend Ukraine. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, but you implied that you would like to see Russia attacked.
Oh no, he didn't imply.
Would you like to see the United States attack Russia?
I would like to see the United States defend Ukraine.
You can just say yes or no.
Can I ask you, Vincent? Can I ask you if we could show you that we could stop the wars by attacking Russia? Would you be for it?
I'm not in favor.
No, they want Ukraine to lose. You know that, right?
I know it, but I'm trying to ask. I'll ask this. Hold on, Tyler. This is to you, Tyler. Tyler, if I may, I'm going to ask the same question I asked.
Wait a minute. I want you to respond to that, Wick. Wait a minute.
Well, can I get this out? I've been very good. I've been very good.
So I don't think it's a good idea for nuclear superpowers to be in a hot war with each other. So no, I don't want to attack Russia.
Even if it would
and I don't want Russia to attack other countries either.
Even if it would mean an end to the war. But I want to ask Tyler this, because I asked...
it would mean an end to the war, all right.
Yeah.
It would mean an end to the war. Yeah, that's the problem. It would end the whole war, in fact. So
this idea that Putin is going to escalate to nuclear arms has been said over and over and over again for the last 4 years. It has not done that, right? I think it's a bluff, and I'm calling his bluff.
Don't worry about it.
Right, but here's the thing. Tyler, I'm going to ask the same question I did to Garland to you. When Russia's interests and America's interests come into conflict, which interests would you like to see succeed in that conflict?
Well, I mean, I disagree with the premise of the question. I mean, I don't think that, we're seeing interest directly. I mean, that's such a black and white question.
It's a pretty clear one. I think it's pretty simple.
I would like to see the interests of both of the peoples of those countries served by not engaging in armed conflict, period. It's real simple. I don't think you guys understand how you sound when you're trying to pimp these positions of, well, we must defend Ukraine and stop Putin. I was in the Army infantry, okay, and I can tell you that, you said war is not the worst thing. Yes, it is. It is absolutely the worst thing ever.
I am a veteran as well, the U.S. Air Force.
Period. There's no.
So I understand.
To say it's not the worst thing is absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you would rather. Okay, let me ask you this: would you like? Which would you rather? Would you rather go to war, or would you rather have you and your family enslaved? Which one?
Again, you're offering these false.
You said that
choices.
war is the worst thing. I'm testing this.
Well, then we should be
statement.
waging a war against the United States government for starters. If you talk about being,
Do you think you were
enslaved.
being enslaved by the United States government?
Absolutely.
How about the
No
lockdowns?
Okay, that's
How about the
insane.
lockdowns?
My
Remember
God.
the
Insane.
lockdowns?
The
They told me I
lockdowns
couldn't
and
leave my house.
slavery are not the
How about
same
the
thing.
compensatory
Wait a minute,
taxation?
wait
my
a
How
minute.
about-
Tyler, wait a minute. I'm interested for everyone in the chat that's listening, watching. Could you leave a Ukraine or a Russia, right, and tell me who you think is the greater impediment to peace right now, Ukraine or Russia? Because I'm interested just to hear what
Me?
most people who are listening think.
Oh,
And
are
I
you
know
asking
you
Who's the
have-
impediment to peace? Is what you're asking?
Yeah, who is the greater impediment to peace? But
Oh,
right
absolutely. Ukraine
Ukraine or
is.
Russia?
Ukraine. It's a criminal regime. It has no credibility. It's frankly propped up completely by questionable forces from outside its own borders. And frankly, it's not holding elections. So how can we determine or gauge the will of the Ukrainian people, quote unquote? Don't tell me, oh, it's their elected president. He refuses to hold elections. They might kick him out and say, we're done with this.
Yeah.
Well,
We will never know because he
Well-
won't hold any kind of
The reason they won't
nothing
hold
to
elections.
express the will of what's left of the Ukrainian people.
What for something that
Can I
concerns
respond to
me-
that?
Yeah. Wait 1 second, because I want to engage you with this before I lose my thought. Over here, our previous Prime Minister Keir Starmer ad nauseum went on about the coalition of the willing, and that if there was a ceasefire, a coalition of Western countries would enter Ukraine and enforce a ceasefire. Doesn't that concern you, knowing that there is that blood feud right now between Russia and Ukraine that would be a demilitarized line with Russia on one side, Ukraine on the other, with Western coalition troops in the middle? Doesn't some setup like that concern you?
I think it is better than the current status quo of what's going on in Ukraine right now because it gives Ukraine security guarantees and makes it more likely that we will see peace. Because as Garland was intimating earlier, right? Nuclear powers going to war with each other is very, very something that I think all parties want to avoid, right? I would disagree with Destiny that I don't want to see Russia bombed or anything. Like, I disagree with him on this. But again, it's that deterrence.
Was that said out of emotion, or does he?
I think he was
sincerely
just
believe
like I think he was just frustrated, as I am, that you guys seem to be giving infinite charity to Russia and no charity to the West. And I think that has been
Where are you-
clear.
where are you-
It's
But
not
can I
true.
just
It's not true. We're
hold on?
we're
You
being
said
fair
hold on. You
because,
said that
again,
you weren't able to answer
Russia
a
has
simple
always, what does
question
Russia fear?
about
What is back
Russian
to
interests
the times of
and
Peter
American
the Great?
interests
What was
colliding.
Russia's fear?
Like, you guys
as a
didn't like it
people?
when
It
Destiny
was being
interrupted you, and
invaded.
here you're doing interrupting me. I don't understand. Like,
Tyler,
Well, I mean, if
just
you
like-
stop filibustering and we can
I'm not
speak for a minute.
filibustering. I'm trying to get a point out, but I can't because you keep interrupting. And if you
Well, I
interrupt, it's
mean,
going to
my
take
God, how long
longer,
is this point?
sir. Like this idea that, again, you can't answer the simple question. You were in the army infantry. You took an oath to the fucking Constitution, and here you are playing footsie
Yeah, the
for the
fucking
Russians,
Constitution.
basically breaking your oath for the Russians and for their interests in order to
I'm not
fucking
breaking my
like
oath at all whatsoever. How did I
promote
break my oath?
this propaganda, right? That America
no, the
government is
propaganda is
enslaving you
propaganda.
because of the
Russia.
lockdowns.
Enemy.
It's
You guys are looking
infuriating.
for
It's
enemies because you
infuriating.
want an all-powerful central state that basically controls and dominates everything domestically and internationally. And frankly, I don't agree.
You know what?
American empire is
Here,
a fallacy.
I'll
and a
demonstrate
farce.
the lie of that right now. Fuck Trump. I'll wait and see if I'm
Okay, so
arrested.
you
I'm
said
not.
Trump.
The idea
And
that
what's your
I
point?
can't.
What's your point?
My
You
point
wanna
is,
break it-
if
I'm
you
not-
were, if
I'm
I
not
was in
everything
Russia,
down to
if
these
I was in
simplistic
Russia
things
and I
as though
said that,
Russia's the
I
aggressor,
would
as
be
though
in
we weren't
in gulag
moving
right
NATO
now. They would
across
disappear
the-
me.
No,
I
you
cannot
wouldn't.
say
That's
fuck
absurd.
Putin in Russia.
Yes, you can. That's absurd. I mean, this kind of preposterous
That's
stuff.
absurd.
can't
What do you
say
think
fuck
happened to
Putin
the
in Russia. That's
protesters at the beginning of the
absurd.
Ukraine war? There was a bunch
Look,
of protesters
first
in
of all,
Russia.
let me say this.
They were disappeared.
me
They
say
don't
this.
exist anymore. Where
Let me
are
say
they,
this.
sir?
Let me
Well,
say
just-
this. If you said free Palestine in the UK or Germany, you'd go to jail. And you better not say
Yes.
it on the
Well,
wrong
I ain't
campus
in
in the
UK and I
United
ain't
States.
in Germany. I'm an American citizen, sir.
Oh, wait a minute, but but you want to decide what free speech is in Russia when you're making it up and it's not even true. But my point being this:
Where are the
I'm sick and
protesters?
tired of hearing
Where are the protesters?
about
sir?
what rights people have in Russia, and they don't. From a person who's never been to Russia and doesn't know what rights they are. About what rights do they have in Ukraine? What about American rights? Yes, I can. I'd rather talk about how pissed off I was over the lockdowns. Yes, because I'm an American. And I didn't agree with that. And I have a right to push back against American policy that I don't like. I want to talk about the advancement of American interests. And by American interests, I mean like the same old average person who's a transmission mechanic or a barber or something who was hurt in the lockdowns by our government policy and lost everything and lost their homes and their families. Those are the kinds of things that concern me. And because we're sending billions of dollars to these lunatics in Ukraine, the average person in the United States who needs help or wants a decent electrical grid, wants their roads taken care of, wants their bridges fixed, wants things like that. We can't get any of that because everybody's got to tell us that we've got to interfere all around the world over who has rights or who doesn't have rights that we can't get ourselves.
So the reason we don't have...
So, wait a minute, wait a minute. Benjamin, do you think when it comes down to it, American-US interests overlap with Ukraine's?
What was the last word you said there?
Ukraine's. Do you think the interests of the US overlaps with Ukraine's?
If I was choosing my what I wanted, we absolutely would quit picking the pockets of the American people in order to do things that don't serve the American people in any way, shape, or form. That's absolutely wild. When Wick was objecting to Tyler here's metaphor of us being under slavery, you know that there was slavery where they didn't even have to pay as high a percentage in taxes as what we do. It just went to a landlord and they were allowed to do whatever they wanted with the rest of their money. Like here in California, they're getting to where there's no point to even going to work. This is why 40% of the country's eating out of the food bank. We're all tired of it. You cult weirdos on the two ends. You're like, you don't care about America either.
Most of Americans want to continue to support these things. Like if we have a conflict of what we want in America, you know how we resolve that?
My God.
You know how we resolve that? We resolve it through elections, right? That isn't slavery. And when you're talking about indentured servitude, the form of slavery where you got to keep some of the right and just had to give it to a lender, indentured servitude, right? Or like serfdom, if you're talking about the UK or something like that, right? Like these things were not good. Having the ability to own private property, which we do in America, is a God-given right that I want to protect. And when we talk about American interests, we do so many billions of dollars a year in trade with Europe, which would be threatened if Ukraine fell. My family is more wealthy, more safe, and more prosperous today
like the Nord
because
Stream
we
pipeline?
have stopped Russia.
Explain how that is the case, that trade between the EU and US would be affected if Ukraine fell to Russia.
Sure. If Ukraine fell to Russia, one of the first things that would happen is that China would go into Taiwan. And that would break off.
You're
laughing, but China has been saber rattling at Taiwan for years. And if they see that Russia is able to take a satellite, like take another nation, and we wouldn't stop them, then they would absolutely go into Taiwan, which we have like a fuzzy relationship with as is. It's not even
May
as
I
clear
ask
as
you
we
one
are.
quick
And
question?
we're going to oppose them with our depleted military?
Wick, may I ask you one quick question?
You can ask me two quick questions.
Okay, this is the question I want to ask you. So if Ukraine falls to Russia, then China is going to take Taiwan, right?
Most likely, yes.
Oh, I was going to say, is there any possibility you could be wrong?
Yes, obviously. Is there any possibility I could rewrite?
What's that?
Is there any possibility I
I'll
could
put it like
rewrite?
this. Yes, but
Okay,
I've
well
seen
then
no
great.
evidence
We
of
got
that.
it.
And other than you, I don't know of any experts who are saying that's going to happen.
However,
You don't know
Right to
any
your
experts
opinion.
thinking
you didn't
that
directly
Ukraine
answer
is...
my question, Wick. Wick, you didn't directly answer my question. I asked you how would trade between the EU and the US be affected?
Sure,
by Ukraine falling to
destabilizing the
Russia?
world.
You started talking about Taiwan.
Yeah, but because these things are connected, we have a global economy, and what happens in one area of the world does have effects and ripple effects
So could
in
you
other
please
areas of the
tell
world. Look
me
at what's
how
happening
trade
with the
between
Houthis and
the
doing
EU would
strikes
be
on look at the Strait of Hormuz that got closed, right? That affects economies all over the world. It affects the
Yes.
ability to get trade. So this idea that
Because
Ukraine
we went to
can
war
fall.
with them.
Say one more time.
Because we went to war with them. Of course it got closed.
I'm saying that if Ukraine were to fall, it would send ripple effects through both the European economy. Other states would look towards
No
their
doubt,
neighbors and
Wick,
begin
Wick,
wars
no
of
doubt, but
aggression
how would that
that would
affect trade
hurt
between
our
the EU
ability to
and the US?
trade. It would make
How?
the world less stable. One of the reasons we're as wealthy as we are is because we are basically protecting trade throughout the world through the sea routes and things like that. That gets harder to do if the world is less stable. Do we not understand this as a concept?
I don't. People are living in their cars. We're not. We being wealthy. This is the way we are wealthy today. Between me and between Bill Gates and I, we're worth 106, an average of about 53 billion each. He's worth 106 billion. I'm worth 0 billion. That's how we're rich. We got people who can't afford stuff. Who don't have, like 60% of Americans don't have $500 bucks in the bank. Average, not lazy, no account good for hardworking American people
living on usurious credit cards.
Right.
Well, you think if we
in this economy? So my point being that if we're in a country where the economy, average, good, hardworking people can't make it, then we need to focus on the average, good, hardworking people. And we need to stop saying we've got to go everywhere.
But you're not going to do
that's
that.
what people are sick of.
You're not going to do
and
that.
You're saying we're wealthy. We wealthy. Well, yeah, me and Bill Gates are very, very wealthy. Between
you have
the
opportunity
two of us,
in America
on a
that you do not have
graph
anywhere
in
else in the world.
averages. I can give you a website and graphs and averages like the Kamala Harris people
Wall
did.
Street is doing great.
Hold on. For the last 50 years, since World War II, okay, the liberal world order has created peace and prosperity that we have not seen in the entirety of the history. Your family, my family, all of us are wealthier today because the liberal world order buttressed that kind of environment, which mitigated the amounts of conflict. When that falls, as it inevitably will, if Ukraine falls, the world gets worse. We have petty tyrants. We have Xi Jinping. We have
the
Putin.
Consolidation of wealth in the hands of. I mean, the gap between the
when he
poorest
says free,
and the
you're free
richest.
to work 3 jobs just to have the same home that you had 50 years
3
ago.
jobs?
Yeah,
Bro,
exactly.
I'm a streamer and I yap for a living, and I'm able to do that because of the prosperity provided me by the U.S. government and the liberal world order.
U.S. government.
You're good at
US
Yes,
government.
they protect my ability to speak freely.
Are you saying
And
that you're paid by the government to stream?
no, I'm
Yes, you
protected.
just said
Sounds
that.
like
Hold on.
it.
Who do you think
Yeah.
protects our First Amendment
Do you
rights?
support the censorship that took place under the Biden administration, the wholesale censorship through CISA and the suppression of alternative viewpoints on social media platforms?
Those
and
were
the
not the Biden
strong-arming of
administration
these-
doing
Yeah, they
that.
were.
Those
Yes,
were
it
the
was.
platforms doing that. And to the extent that jawboning
okay,
took
right,
place,
right.
hold
No,
on.
that was the
To the
army
extent that
invading, not the
jawboning
US
took place,
government.
I condemn it,
Come on.
and I
Did you
stood
miss
up
the
against it, and I have a
the
record of doing
congressional
so.
hearings?
But we live under
They
an
had direct
administration
lines to
right
these
now that
guys,
is the
and
greatest threat to
it's
free
the sword
speech
of
we have seen in a
Damocles.
generation where Trump is
they
trying to
can't argue
jail
with
his
people who
political
don't wanna
enemies,
accept
where
reality.
Trump
I mean,
is
it's
trying
just-
to silence and sick the FCC on comedians who make fun of him, where he is bringing forth lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit for pollsters who don't poll like he wants them to, for Perkins Coie and other law firms that have participated in lawsuits against his interests. Like, we could talk about Biden's censorship and how he wasn't great with the First Amendment, but boy, oh boy, that is nothing compared to how Trump
This
has
is not about
trampled on the
This-
U.S.
this is the
Constitution and my right to
problem
free
with-
speech.
Yeah.
But
None
even
of us
so,
going
even
after-
still,
going after
even
Perkins
still, the
Coie is the
U.S.
same as
government protects my
silencing
right
individual
to
citizens.
speak freely. It is, we are one of the freest
I
countries in the
agree.
world.
Trump also shouldn't censor the First Amendment.
Yes, exactly.
Nobody should. Right.
And yet,
I
he was-
myself said
And let me
on
add one
Benson.
All
thing.
these people break
Yep.
it.
Let me add something. He said, "Oh no, that was just what Wick just said was no, that was the platforms doing it." If anybody remembers, the Twitter files came out,
oh my
and the Twitter
God.
files specifically showed these were
Those
files
lies.
from Twitter, right? And what did they show? That the FBI had like a desktop program where they were communicating with these various social media platforms.
Yes, they
and I
social
forgot the name.
media-
Oh, but can I finish, Wick? This is important. Okay, you made a
It was a
point,
direct
and I'm going to make
pipeline.
mine. And they were taking requests from members of Congress. They would send them literally a post and say, "Take this down."
And
Things
you know
and
what
say, "Take
Twitter
this
would
down." So
say
my
to
point
many
is
things?
this.
They
My
would say
point
no.
is this. My point. I'm making a point here, so I got to finish this point. And my point is this: That is unconstitutional. The government cannot do an end around the Constitution. The government couldn't take those posts down because that would be a violation of the First Amendment. But the same way, the government can't say to Twitter, I can't take them down. You take them down at my behest, because then legally, Twitter is acting as an agent for the government. So that is a constitutional violation. You can say it. I don't care if you say it doesn't happen. It wouldn't take me 5 minutes to bring up the Twitter file and show that these were files that were released from Twitter. But whether you like it or not, or you push back against it, that's what happened. And furthermore, there are those of us who believe in the Constitution and the First Amendment, and it doesn't matter who the president is. Okay, Tyler.
Garland, let me weigh in here.
Everybody, wait a minute. I'm going to need to end this.
clear.
I'm going to need to end this in a moment. So I've got one last question for you, right, before I wrap this up. Where
just
will
real
we
quick,
be?
if I may get.
Yeah, finish your point.
Okay. The notion that these platforms are private, they're given sovereign immunity through Section 230. So, I don't know any companies that can operate and have total immunity from any sort of civil lawsuits or any litigation. So, let's get real here. That was meant to open up the platforms and prevent them from being shut down by lawsuits. And they've used it as an excuse and a shield against their censorship.
Okay. To veer us back to the war between Russia and Ukraine,
I do have a limited time. Just to be
where
clear.
will we be in 1 year's time, Garland?
Well, I think the way things are going, I think Ukraine's in a lot of trouble. And I think that Ukraine getting landlocked is kind of like the death knell for the Ukrainian military. So, for the Ukrainians. So I think Ukraine within the next year, particularly with now that they're landlocked, is going to be a world of trouble. I think it's going to fall apart internally. That's my opinion. I think it's going to internally, politically collapse.
Benjamin.
I think that this pays out. I think that while we're not funding it in particular right now, there's just kind of a little secession in the fighting. I think we still have every interest in not letting Russia succeed in the energy sector, which is something they have so much more capability of doing than us. I think that they still have every interest in seeing Russia stay financially down, and that we're going to try and drag this out as long as we can, because I don't think it's about really winning this war at this point. And the American people are just going to keep getting pickpocketed until we don't have nothing left.
Tyler.
I think a lot of what is going to happen with the Ukraine situation, Russia situation, is tied to what's going to happen in Iran. And I think whether we're able to draw down that conflict and not see it expand will have a direct impact on what happens with that with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So it's hard to say. Because it keeps whipsawing in with Trump back and forth. There's negotiations. There's no negotiations. I think that's really going to be the linchpin as far as what happens and whether there will be able to be peace there. Otherwise, it's just going to continue on as a war of attrition, grinding down the peoples of both countries, sadly. And draining our treasury in the process.
And Europe has a big election a year too. There's going to be elections in a lot of major countries in Europe, and I think that there will be victories of people who are more representative of the people of Europe that will oppose this, unless they just steal it like they do everywhere else.
Yeah, we've already seen that in Hungary, actually. You're correct. Orban got BTFO'd, and the people have risen up and thrown off that dictator, and Russia's lost an ally there. So that's good, and I think you're exactly right. We are going to see what the will of the people. What is this war going to look like in a year? So I've been clear about this from the beginning. I don't know who's going to ultimately win. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have access to the information I would need to know to make that determination. But what I can say is that Russia is, for the first time in a long time, gaining territory. It has stopped the Russian advance, and it is threatening threatening Russian logistics, and has threatened its hold on Crimea. They are having troubles with getting supplies to their people. Their counteroffensives and their offensives against Ukrainians have stalled out, and there are hopeful signs. Now, again, war is a business that is hard to predict. I cannot say with any degree of certainty what the war will look like in a year's time. But what I can say is that I hope that the war ends soon. And the best way to do that is by ensuring Ukraine has the best state possible to enter into any kind of negotiations and to force Putin to come to the table with realistic terms. And I appreciate you having me on. It was a little bit one-sided, but that's okay. It was a little bit unfair.
I apologize for that. You
guys needed more people
You did bring
to make it more
bring
fair.
Destiny on.
I did for a little bit, right? But it was still.
I will say you defended your positions with respectfully and neighborly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I do have to go.
Unlike Destiny, that guy's a lunatic.
Well, I like Destiny. Destiny's my
You did. I mean, I respect you. I don't agree with you, but I respect you. But the guy's he's not very.
I think he doesn't. I think that he is. More
I think he's
used to my
emotional.
style
He's very
than he is to
emotional. He
this style.
couldn't compose or control himself.
He's more used to my style.
Listen. I would
I
like
do
to
have
say
to
what
go.
I think it would be. In a year, I think you'll witness the complete fragmentation of Ukraine and it becoming a complete landlocked country. You know,
Would you like to make a bet on
you're
that?
you're alluding to the same thing, Garland. I think the Donbass will probably fall to completely to Russia by the end of the year. If not by the end of the year, by spring. I think you've just got Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. And once they take the Donbass, if Zelensky continues doing what he's doing, I think we're going to see other oblasts fall, like Sumy, you know, and maybe see Odessa to fall to Russia. And sadly, the ones who suffer most for that will be the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Can I shout myself out before I go, real quick?
Can you what?
Shout myself out. I have to go. I've it's been 2 hours, and I do have to
Yeah.
quit the field, unfortunately, because I have other responsibilities.
Yes.
But if you liked what I had to say, or if you hated what I had to say, either way, I do debates like this all the time on @WiC-TV on YouTube or WiC-TV on Twitch. You can find me on Twitter @WiC-TV. I'm always willing to hear the other side out and have a robust discussion. I won't always agree with you, but I'll always hear you out. And it's been. And I appreciate getting to know you all.
Oh, come on, finish that.
Okay. I was expecting something different. Let's say that. I'm not
He's used to a little bit more spicy. He said this is a little bit Midwestern potato salad for him.
I fight with Destiny sometimes, so you have to. It's a certain style.
On behalf,
okay?
that's easy
on
to
behalf of the
believe.
two Nixons here, I would like to dedicate this to the memory of Lee Stranahan.
Yes.
Okay. I'll talk to you guys later.